Office to protect tenants. We are also joined by Jermaine Williams, the Borough Coordinator, Department of Social Services for New York City HRA. Unfortunately, due to some last-minute conflicts, the State Department of Homes and Community Renewal will not be able to join us. But we are also joined and will be joined by a bevy of elected officials. All of these electeds represent areas in Community Board 4, but if you are attending from outside our community district, that doesn't mean these issues don't apply to you. By way of example, we are going to be joined by the Speaker of the New York City Council, Corey Johnson, who represents this district, works for the entire city. We are also going to be joined by the Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer. We are going to be joined by City Council member Helen Rosenthal from the Upper West Side, who represents a small part of CB4. On the state side, we will be joined by State Senators Brad Hoylman and Robert Jackson, by our Assembly Member Richard Gottfried and Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. We will also finally be joined by Congressman Jerry Nadler from the 10th District, which is basically all of the west side of Manhattan. Once we get through the presentations from the electeds, they have been asked to keep their presentations short and address specifically how they are working to protect tenants in this time of crisis. We will go to the Q&A. John will moderate the Q&A from the Q&A window, and we will move on from there. So with that introduction, the other thing I should do is I should thank the district manager, Jesse Bodine, for putting this all together. Jesse, is there anything I missed in this intro that we should be covering?
I'm sorry, I was doing some technical stuff. No, I think I heard everything. I just want to make sure did we address the phone options?
Oh, the phone option. No, I did not address the phone option. If you have dialed in by telephone, and I'm not sure whether or not anyone has. There are a couple of participants. Yeah. We have a couple of participants by phone. It's *6 to unmute yourself. We will give you a chance at some point to ask a question if you're on the phone, if you are not able to log in and ask a question through the Q&A function. Otherwise, we will have to unmute you. Otherwise, you will not be able to address the panelists. And with that, John Furlong from HCC, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Lowell. It's really nice to see everybody. I hope that we can one day see each other in person. My name is John Furlong again. I'm the organizing director at Housing Conservation Coordinators. Really want to thank all of our other panelists, just echoing a little bit of what Lowell said for joining us and the agencies that are here. A little bit about HCC for those that are unfamiliar with who we are and what we do. We are a 48-year-old community-based organization in Hell's Kitchen. We serve tenants of that neighborhood, Clinton, Chelsea, and the Upper West Side. I supervise an organizing staff of about 3 people, and I'll actually include myself, so it's 4. And then we have a very large legal component that help tenants that are facing eviction, have legal questions, or want to take their landlords to court affirmatively. We also organize tenants associations in buildings throughout those neighborhoods, and also provide weatherization services. So, things obviously look a whole lot different for us in the way that we do our work, and the way that we interact with the community, and the way that we interact with tenants. And when Jesse kind of asked me to talk about the state of tenant protections and the sort of the affordable housing picture, I mean, so much is different and so much is also the same. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of what we've been seeing in our community, and then also a little bit about what folks have been sort of the questions people have been raising in the face of all this, and some of the organizing that's taken place. So first of all, I think it's important to note, as folks may already know, that on March 16th, rather, the Chief Administrative Judge for New York State issued a memo which basically suspended eviction statewide until further notice. Basically, what that means is that during the health crisis, landlords can't sue. There will be no evictions, and all courts that hear eviction cases are closed. The more that moratorium basically applies to residential tenants and commercial tenants. In New York City, there's exceptions for this, and there are exceptions around illegal lockouts, serious housing code violations, post-eviction cases, vacate orders, and repair orders. There are emergency courtrooms in every borough's housing court that will be open to deal with these types of cases. If you need to contact a city marshal for any reason, we can provide that information. But just, I think, wanted to kind of lead with that. That was sort of the most significant thing, I think, that happened right after kind of everybody went into lockdown. Sort of more on the local picture for HCC, we've really been continuing to try and help tenants on an individual level in any way possible. We do have a hotline that people can call in, which obviously we'll share at the end, but our services have really, and the types of work that we do with tenants have really just continued, only just kind of moving into a virtual space. We do continue to do legal intakes with people. People continue to come to us with all kinds of different questions. And one of our supervising attorneys, Lynn Horowitz, was nice enough to sort of compile some of the things that we've continued to see, as this sort of health crisis has developed. People are obviously still nervous about ongoing eviction cases. Folks are nervous about complying with stipulations that they've entered into. People have had trouble with accessing, and this is either applying or recertifying benefits around Section 8 or SCREE. People have, really had issues in terms of safely getting repairs. We've had a lot of questions around, well, if I call 311, is somebody going to actually come to my building and make an inspection? And so we've been trying to sort of do some organizing and some have conversations with HPD about how that's going to proceed. Tenants have continuing to, obviously receiving rent demands and notices for late fees and legal fees from landlords. And I think really chiefly among all these things is that, all these concerns rather, is that people are really concerned about a loss of income due to the pandemic. We have been working individually with people who have faced a loss of income and are going to have trouble paying rent, are going to have trouble paying rent. We estimate right now that 40% of people will not be able to pay rent on May 1st. I think that number is probably going to go way up by June 1st. And so again, just really sort of trying to work with folks on an individual level to kind of think through and talk about some of that stuff. It's obviously no one's fault that they can't pay rent, and we're just really want folks to know that we're here for them. I think the other space that we've been working in and another issue that people have been wondering about and asking about is that as we sort of move through the spring and, we're almost at May 1st, for those that, that are familiar in that we're sort of getting into the rent guidelines board season. So, right, we're starting to edge into that time where landlords will get up and testify in front of the rent guidelines board. Tenants will get up and testify and do the same. And we're really pushing, and the mayor has kind of come out to say publicly that the rent guidelines board for this year should be canceled. If we're not going to have a public process in terms of hearing from tenants and hearing from people across the city about rent levels in rent stabilized buildings, that we really shouldn't continue with that process as it stands right now. So trying to work hard to sort of really mitigate some of that and see if we can bring some tenants some relief. Those are really, again, I think the big things that we've been seeing, but it's really, I think tenants are just continuing to sort of see and deal with a lot of the problems they faced before. They're just, I think, having probably a more difficult time getting access to services, and we're really trying to help people kind of work through that. I'm seeing questions pop up in the Q&A, which is awesome. But right now, I think that we're going to kind of move into our sort of the agency report back portion of our agenda. So we're really, really glad to have Ricardo Martinez Campos from the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants. And Jesse, is ORA, are they on?
Or I know
Is
they're.
Jermaine on? They are?
No, I'm sorry. You mean
You mean
uh,
HRA?
HRA,
HRA?
sorry.
Jermaine is
Sorry.
on. Jermaine is
Jermaine
on.
is on. Yes.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I just really, again, want to acknowledge this Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants and HRA for joining us this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to Ricardo.
Yep.
Just, I think, give her a report back on some of the things that that his office has been working on, some of the things they're seeing, and perhaps how they've done their work a little bit different.
Sure. Thank you so much, John. Jesse, I had a slide deck. How is this going to work?
Yeah, hold on 1 second, please.
Of course. Okay.
Apologies to those of you on the phone who can't see the deck. If you can log into the website, you will see the presentation.
And we can provide it to anybody that requests it again. I want to make sure everybody's seeing it as well. Is that
Okay?
Is my screen shared?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're good. You're
Great.
good, Jesse.
You're good. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. I just want to introduce myself very quickly. I'm Ricardo. I'm the Deputy Director for the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants. And I'm really happy to be here. I think that many of the things that John has raised are very important things that, of course, have been voiced out more importantly and in more volume during this crisis. And we're here and we've been working hard to make sure we put out there resources to help tenants for these particular situations. I'm going to go a little bit over what my office does and what types of work we cover, but I'm also going to speak about the resources that we provide during these times. And about those resources, I can speak in more detail once we get into the Q&A. But happy to answer any questions from the panel while the slide deck is going. So can we go to the next one, Jesse, or can I control that? Oh, you. Okay, so we are a relatively new office. For those who don't know about us, it's because we were just created last year by the mayor. Our first director, Jackie Bray, she started in summer of 2019. Just FYI, she's right now deployed to emergency management, so she's been in touch with us. But of course, you know, she's right now being focused on some other work. But we're still operating with the team, trying to make sure we put out there everything that we need to protect our tenants. MOPT was created as a core part of the city's strategy to confront the affordable housing crisis. One of the things that we really wanted to bring to the table is serve as a central point both for advocacy groups and tenants to access the city resources when it comes to protecting tenants. But also one of the things that we're most interested in is making sure that our enforcement strategies are coordinated. So one of the things that we do is we work across the different city agencies like HPD, DOB, HRA, everyone that has or conducts any type of enforcement to make sure that that enforcement is done in the most strategic way. So we don't necessarily oversee that enforcement, but we make sure that tenants and tenant advocates that need to access to that enforcement or that need in some way any type of response from these agencies, we make sure that they get answers for their claims and their inquiries and their complaints. Can we go to the next one? Very briefly, our main areas of focus are three. One is enforcement coordination, the second one is outreach and engagement, and the third one is policy creation. In the area of enforcement coordination, as I mentioned, we work across city agencies to make sure everyone is talking to each other. Many of the things that we face in the city when it comes to enforcement have or are necessarily cross, you know, it's a work across agencies, right? When we have an issue from HPD, it happens that we usually also have an issue from DOB and so on. So we make sure that everyone is talking to each other and we make sure that tenant advocates are getting the results from these agencies. So we do a lot of work about enforcement coordination, and we also do work around data and data-driven strategies to make sure our enforcement work is data-driven. So like making sure that we're targeting the most egregious cases of enforcement, we're making sure that we're doing the best that we can do in terms of litigation and so on. In terms of outreach and engagement, this is an area that we have focused heavily in the past months, and particularly during this crisis. I think it's one of the areas that we've been the most invested. We actually have an outreach and engagement director who is joining me today. Her name is Greta Aiken, and she is the one in charge of communicating to tenant advocates and organizing with tenant advocates different events, town halls, Know Your Rights campaign, so that we make sure that everything that we're putting out there, people know about that. In the past months, we've collaborated with many community-based organizations in different neighborhoods in New York City, putting out their campaigns to make sure the tenants know about what we do. Part of the outreach and engagement strategies that we did last year was a very successful, what I believe was a very successful public education campaign on the rent laws. You might have seen the ads on the subway, on bodegas, laundromats, making sure that tenants knew what their rights were after the passing of the state law regarding, or the HCCPA. We also make sure that we have an open platform for tenants to reach out to us. No, that's okay. We make sure that we have an open platform for tenants to reach out to us, so tenants can connect with us via our website. And if they have questions, and if they need direct help, or if they don't know who to reach out to because they are not working with an organizer or with a community organization, we make sure that A, they get connected with someone that can help them, and also B, we make sure that we help them solve their issues. So we're working two levels, right? With organizations that are helping tenants and with tenants directly. And finally, policy creation, which is part of the things that we do on the background, making sure that pro-tenant policies are brought to the table and are discussed in City Hall. So we can jump to the next slide. Okay, so this is a very short summary of the things that we've been working on in the past months that are very relevant today for resources for tenants. And again, I'm very happy to talk more about this during the Q&A. But just some things to highlight. So on our website, we published a tenant protection fact sheet for tenants that have been impacted by coronavirus. The next slide talks a little bit more about the different sections that fact sheet has. We also partnered with the Tenant Support Unit. So the Tenant Support Unit is a division of the Mayor's Public Engagement Unit, and they're basically a group of specialists that help us case manage tenants that reach out to us. So right now, we have a very strong partnership. If a tenant reaches out to us and say, hey, I need help, and I have issues not only about housing, for example, my landlord is harassing me, my landlord is trying to illegally evict me, but I also need help with accessing to benefits like cash assistance, SNAP, and so on, we make sure that a case manager is assigned and they help them not only with their tenant issues, so like making sure that the landlord stops harassing them, but also accessing to the different services that they need. This is something that the Tenant Support Unit provides on a case-by-case basis. We also partner with the Office of Civil Justice, again from HRA, and Jermaine can talk more about the different teams that HRA has working on right now. But with the Office of Civil Justice, we launched a legal assistance helpline. This is something that we launched 2 weeks ago. In that particular helpline is also, the Tenant Support Unit is also involved in that work. And this is basically a helpline that we set up for tenants during coronavirus that can reach out to us to 311 for any type of tenant-related issue that they're facing. It's a very comprehensive and well-staffed helpline with the purpose of making sure that if a tenant has any question, we can help him or help them in the process of answering the question. And if it's needed, we can provide legal assistance. So many of the providers that have or are working in collaboration with OCJ, many of the legal providers that work on a regular basis with the Office of Civil Justice, with the Rider Council, they are right now staffing the helpline. So we make sure that if a tenant needs legal assistance, they are connected with those providers. And the only thing that the tenant needs to do is to call 311 and say, hey, I'm facing these particular tenant issues. I would like to get some legal assistance. The fourth is the coordination with city agencies and other mayoral offices. And this is very important for those that are doing tenant organizing or that are working directly with tenants. So as John was saying, we're seeing that there is a lot of tenants that are facing emergency situations. So they need repairs in their apartments, or they were working for a specific repair and the landlord is not showing up. They can reach out to us, the organizers, and we make sure that they get assistance for that. So all this to say that that coordination across agencies that we used to have before, it's still in place. We're still working with the different agencies to make sure that these emergency repairs are happening. And finally, tenants can visit our MOPT website for information about general tenant rights. We have a very comprehensive library about HCCPA, but also other different rights for different types of tenants. So that's a good starting point for anyone that has questions about their tenancy rights. We can go to the next one, Jesse. Okay, so this is just a screenshot of our website. I wanted to highlight how to get to our fact sheet. So if you type nyc.gov/tenant protection, this is what it's going to show. On the second banner, the purple one that says tenant rights for tenants with COVID-19 or under home quarantine, if you click on that one, can you show the next slide, Jesse? This is what is going to redirect you to. So it's a fact sheet that buckets the different types of guidances the city and the state have issued in terms of housing related or tenant related matters. So if a tenant has questions right now about what are the different guidances in place due to coronavirus and how that affects their tenancy, this is the place that they should go to. This is the place where they can find all the information. And if they don't find answers to their questions, they can reach out to us through the website. So on top and just before these different buckets, the tenant will find a contact us link that's going to connect to a contact us form. They fill out the form, they describe the issue that they're facing, and we will get back to them. But we've found that this fact sheet has been very helpful for many tenants that are only looking for like very quick and fast responses to the questions that they have. So this is a very good starting point during the crisis for tenants to look for information. Again, what I've mentioned before, what is the best way to connect with the mayor's office to protect tenants, with the tenant support unit, or with legal assistance, or with the legal assistance helpline? The first thing that I would ask everyone to do is go and take a look at our fact sheet. You can visit it through nyc.gov/tenant protection. And again, if you don't find answers to your question, you can send us a message through the contact us form. But you can also call 311. If that's easier for you, you can just take the phone, call 311 and say, this is my issue. I want to speak with the mayor's office to protect tenants. I need help, and we're here to help you. I think there's one more slide. Yes. For those that want to, and we can, again, as Jesse mentioned, we are more than happy to share the slide deck, but these are all other additional and helpful resources. We work, usually most of our work is across agencies that have to do with housing issues and making repairs and enforcement and litigation, but we also work with other agencies and mayoral offices that do work for tenant rights, discrimination, and domestic violence. So these are some of the lines that you can take a look at and access for more information for these particular issues. So we have the 24-hour domestic violence hotline, the Department of the Aging for the Aging contact information, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs hotline. We work very closely with MOIA when it comes to working with immigrant tenants. And this is a good segue to say, everyone can access to the helpline. The helpline that we have in place right now, the 311 number, everyone can access to those resources. It does not matter your citizenship, your income, where you live in New York City, anyone can access to it. But they can also reach out to the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs using that line, and also with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. And we usually, when the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, the CCHR, the Commission on Human Rights, or the Office for People with Disabilities, when they usually get a case that has to do with tenancy, they connect with us and we work in collaboration. So don't worry, if you reach out to any of these agencies, we'll make sure that you're getting the correct resources that you need to get answers to your questions or get solutions to your issues. And I would say that that's it from my end.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I just want to remind everyone or tell everyone all of the information, the contact information for the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants, for HRA, for Community Board 4, and for all of the electeds will be shared with everyone who registered for this forum. It will also be available on the Community Board 4 website. You can go to MCB4.nyc and it'll be on our homepage, so you'll be able to access all of this information in the future. You don't have to be writing down every phone number that we give you. Go ahead, John.
No, thanks so much for raising that, Lowell. And I just wanted to also thank Ricardo again for all that information and that presentation. Something I'm hoping that folks out there found that really informative and really helpful. And it's good to know that you guys are out there and doing such great work. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jermaine Williams, who's the Borough Director at Department of Social Services for HRA. We're really glad that he could be with us tonight. So Jermaine, take it away.
Jermaine, I think you're muted. Yeah.
Great.
Jermaine, you there? Nope, you just muted yourself. All right.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I first want to thank Jesse for putting this together with Community Board 4, because of course this is an amazing experience to actually do a presentation to so many people, virtual now, which is a new term that we're all into. Again, as you can see, anytime New York City comes into a problem, it's amazing how well we come together to try to implement and make changes to make sure constituents that we're going to deal with on a day-to-day basis are pretty much getting the help that they need, as well as being a new experience that we take forward into hoping that we don't have this problem again in the future, but at least we'll be prepared better if we do. So one of the things I'm hoping a lot of people on the panel is familiar with, or in the audience, is HRA pretty much been a support agency for some years now. A lot of times we're pretty much like the we want to say like the back end to self-sufficiency. When people fall into hard times or trying to get back on their feet, they reach out to us. And of course, during this pandemic, this is another reason why they're going to reach out to us. So I'm not sure if Jesse uploaded the presentation. Okay. Yeah. Okay,
give me 1 second.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And while he's setting it up, so I'm gonna briefly go through this. Because and if you have any questions, I'll definitely ask them at the end. We try to keep this really simplified because this is a basic presentation that we would do about all our services. So Human Resources Administration, again, my name is Jermaine Williams. You go to the next slide. HRA, these are pretty much all the core services that we have when we deal with in New York City constituents on a regular basis, where we offer services like cash assistance, unemployment services, SNAP, supplemental nutrition assistance, which is also known as food stamps, Medicaid, which is medical assistance, child support enforcement, and we also have Department of Homeless Services, which is now under us, which is home, and we also work with homelessness and prevention, and we offer services as well. We also assist with our most vulnerable New Yorkers through immigrant and language service access, IDNYC, HIV and AIDS services known as HASA, our home care services, APS, Adult Protective Services, our domestic violence, as well as emergency food services and home assistance program known as HEAP. Next slide. Next one, the cash assistance. So the one thing I'm really happy about, and of course it's unfortunate that it had to be during this time that we was able to implement it, but one of the things that we actually got waivers on, which was a hard process, was to get waivers for individuals to actually be able to apply for cash assistance online. This in turn helped us alleviate a lot of foot traffic in light of the pandemic for people coming into our offices. As it stands, we pretty much reduced our office size to having one in every borough. And that's just for services, you know, just in case people can't get or are not used to going online or can't get to our services. Likewise, we have our centers open for them to get to. Because right now, our main focus is having individuals to apply for our services online during nyc.gov/access HRA, where they can apply for SNAP, cash assistance, and Medicaid, as well as apply for one-shot deals and also find out all updates of what's going on within HRA once we make any changes or any new services come available. So as people apply for cash assistance on a regular basis, it was always an ongoing process. We do offer one-time assistance for emergency needs. Eligibility for cash assistance always depends on factors such as income, expenses, resources, and household composition, as well as immigrant status. Applications are filed normally at our job centers, but as I mentioned, because now we have the waiver, people can actually do it online. And information and resources must be verified during the application process. So now we're actually doing a lot of more phone interviews via for people who are new. And in light of the pandemic, we're actually waiving telephone interviews and recertifications for people who already had assistance from us. The next slide. Again, so our emergency assistance also considered a one-time grant, which is usually part of our HEAT program, which usually is initiated during the winter seasons, which for heating homes, and we're actually going into our spring/summer, which applications start to roll out for people to get air conditioners, and we start opening up our cooling centers as the weather starts to change towards heat waves. Most people do look at emergency assistance for applying for assistance when it comes to utility shutoff notices, where they come in and they ask for a one-shot deal for utilities, disaster assistance for moving expense, for personal items, and we also do one-shot deals for evictions that are pending or prior to evictions to try to get individuals out of court. Next slide, I'm sorry. So this is how our Access HRA website pretty much looks, and the services you could pretty much sign up for, which is applying for SNAP online. You could be certified for cash assistance and SNAP cases, and also now apply for cash assistance. You could get a periodic report. You could submit a periodic report, and this is pretty much something that's sent out to individuals every 6 months to get an idea what their situation is, because the way we look at certain situations, month to month, things are always changing. So we give them that 6 months period to let us know, hey, everything's either okay or all right. They submit the application, and they can, the report, and they continue getting benefits going forward. The one thing that's also great about individuals signing up for Access HRA is that they get real-time information updates on their case, and they also have the option to, if they have new documents that they want to upload to our systems, they could take picture of it and upload the system, and in turn, they also have copies of their documents that they submitted because this is on their profile network setup. They can also request for a budget letter just to get an idea of how our agency comes up with a calculation to the amount of assistance they're getting for a household. And if they feel something's incorrect, they can pretty much reach out to us with the information to verify why something was incorrect, and we can rebudget the case. Next slide. Again, I mentioned most of this. You could pretty much upload documents. You get notifications saying, hey, you know what, your recertification period's coming up. You need to recertify by a certain time. You get to get an idea what your case status is. You get to find out what your EBT balance, which is your electronic benefits card. You get an update of what your appointments are, documents that you own, documents you recently received, and of course, recent payments to your landlord when you apply for cash assistance. All right, next slide. And let me know if I'm going too fast. Sorry.
You're doing just fine.
Okay, thank you. So HRA, we work closely in partnership with Department of Homeless Services as well as other agencies to help New Yorkers who are in danger of losing their homes to keep them. HRAs aim to help individuals and families maintain their current home and avoid going into a shelter, finding temporary shelter services when needed. All this transition from shelters to stable home and affordable housing. And with that, we usually refer individuals to our home-based partners to turn around and help with our City for HEPS voucher. And this is a voucher that pretty much helps stabilizes incomes with certain levels based on household composition that HRA help pay in light of individuals in the process of possibly losing their apartments prior to eviction. So Home-Based pretty much has more than 32 locations throughout New York City. And of course, in light of what's going on, they are working remotely from home, and they do have numbers, if you go to their website, that people can actually call and reach out to. Real quick, in light of the City for HEPS updates, we continue to operate our City for HEPS programs with some modifications to usual process. For clients whose eligibility is based on employment, they will still be eligible to rent housing with New York City for HEPS, even if they have reduced or lost work during the pandemic. We will automatically reissue City for HEPS shopping letters as they expire. There's no need to reapply. Apartment inspections, we have created a virtual viewing and a walkthrough process. Clients will also be able to view the apartment virtually. HRA is still processing and issuing checks, and each day we expand our ability to work with remotely with expediting payments. So people who are receiving assistance where we're paying the rent, that's going to continue ongoing. And one of the things that made it easier for clients to apply for cash through Access HRA is that now we can focus on processing the cases faster, where people get ongoing assistance without too many hiccups or delay, with a lot of back and forth going into the center. We also, as mentioned by Ricardo, have legal services that also help provide free legal assistance to those facing eviction or harassment from landlords or other issues. Real quick, I was on the phone with a constituent working with them, and of course they was passing up the information that a friend of theirs, the landlord, was trying to tell them that he's going to take them to court if they're not paying the rent. And of course I told them, no, that's not really true. So we do know there are landlords out there, harassing clients about this. So I gave them my information, let them know, yes, you can email me this so I can refer you to our civil justice unit so they can look into it. Because we know at this time that's something that's going to be on a lot of people's mind, making the decision between, paying my rent and being evicted or putting food on the table because of, the times we're in. And I leave the number there that you could definitely share. The next slide. I think it's going to be 2. Okay, as I mentioned, your rental assistance, HRA provide a variety of rental assistance programs as part of, as I mentioned, the City FEPS, which is a program to help families and individuals remain out of shelter and with ongoing housing assistance. The shelter provides temporary emergency shelter to homeless individuals and families with a rich conundrum of social services, such as counseling, case management, substance abuse treatment, specialized services for veterans, and housing permanency services for collections, eligibility for households to rental assistance program, and delivers directly in collaboration with other agencies and community partners. We always tell families, especially now, they can always reach out to 301 to connect to any of our services. If any assistance with chronically street homeless New Yorkers that they encounter in the street, especially in the subways, they can call 311 or download the 311 app. The next slide. Continue. Oh, okay. And this is how, so elected officials and, community boards can always reach out to me when they have constituent issues. But in light of, working remotely from home, it's a lot easier for them to reach out to HRA when they have, concerns about their case, because for one, we do need authorization to share case information with anybody outside of the family who's calling about the case. And when you call constituent services or you send an email, constituents can authorize either verbally or by writing, saying, yes, I authorize this person to, you could share case information about my case, and it makes it a little easier for us. And then, of course, if they need information, just general information for HRA, they can call our 718-557-1399, which is our info line number, and they can always go to our website. Our commissioner every Tuesday pretty much throws he puts on a conference call with our partners and elected officials about updates on the agency and what we're doing, and then we automatically update our website based on the following changes so that everybody's on the same page. And I'm pretty much it. Thank you for your time, and I'm still here.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jermaine.
Thanks, Jermaine.
I just
Okay.
want to explain that we started with the city agencies. Our elected officials are with us. We have a great set of elected officials representing this district, and they are with us all the time. We thought it was important to start with the city agencies because that's information that a lot of people don't have. So now we are going to move to our elected officials, and since the community board reports up to the Manhattan Borough President, we are going to start with the Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer.
Thank you. Wait a minute, let me unmute myself. Oh my
You're
gosh.
unmuted, Gail.
Okay, you can hear me now.
You're good, Gail.
Anyway, thank you, Lowell and Jesse. And I do want to thank the city officials because, I have my quibble sometimes with higher ups. I have no quibble. Amazing work that the city officials are doing, and I really deeply appreciate it. So I also think that as time goes on, we're going to change our habits in terms of the use of technology, because it has, in some cases, given more people the opportunity to get information. And then also we have everybody's cell number. So I love it. It's interesting to me because right now, since, I don't know, March 12th or so, the calls that have come in have been, as you can imagine, food, seniors, small businesses that are really freaked out, and certainly the nonprofit community, from arts to social services, about having funding, health, PPE, unemployment, construction, undocumented issues, nursing homes, devices for schools, and people are concerned and call about social distancing and where they can get products and so on. Even alternative side of the street parking until that was eliminated for now anyway, but not a lot on the issue of housing. That is going to change. As soon as the moratorium is, if it is, no longer in existence, and we've only had a couple of semi-evictions. The marshal showed up at one case, we were able to stop it. So it's really important to have this discussion, because as soon as either it's May 1st or June 1st, when people will find themselves in the throes of housing court, we don't want that. We do not want people to have to go to housing court. So this is really important. I am not the expert in trying to figure out where we get money for tenants who have lost their jobs. But to me, that's the crux of the matter. Because yes, you can try for a one shot when we are on the call, and I appreciate Commissioner Banks every single Tuesday, 4 o'clock, I'm on, listening and trying to figure out how to deal with some of these issues. As his point is, I'm not going to do one shots when we have a moratorium, but as soon as that's up, I think we all should be aware of what the date is, whether it's May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, and be ready for the onslaught, because those owners will try to get their money. And if people can pay rent, they can, but many people can't. We've got to find some other source of funding. So on March 27th, which seems like 100 years ago now, with the borough president of Brooklyn and some of the council members, Carnegie and Powers, we asked that, one suggestion would be to use the tenant security deposit towards April or May or whatever rent. It didn't get picked up by the governor. The mayor has mentioned it, and interestingly, the governor of New Jersey has mentioned it as a possibility. Again, nothing has happened, but I think everything has to be on the table in terms of how people can find funding to pay the rent. And I know Furman Center is looking at something that would impact, have some kind of positive impact on this income challenge. Second, you heard earlier, and I never can thank Housing Conservation enough, HCC, for all they do. I don't know, 30 or 40 years. Thank you, thank you. And the issue of the Rent Guidelines Board is we are just saying rent freeze. I must admit, I don't have this, if they want to have hearings because they feel they have to by law, but when I go, and I have been going for like 30 years to Rent Guidelines Board to testify, the audience is older. There are people like Ann Cunningham, who's a volunteer in our office, and she doesn't even have a computer. She doesn't even have a cell phone. So it is correct that you're not going to get a real public session. Those tenants have been fighting for years, and they do not go on Zoom, and they're not going to be able to, and therefore, yeah, right, they're not real hearings. But if they have to have them, fine, as long as it's a 0, 0, 0, no rent increase. The other issue is just money, and that has to come from the state or the federal government, and there's a back and forth. The small owners of buildings are also concerned. They're having trouble getting the PPP from the federal government or anything from the state or the city. And so they have mortgages, and then the banks have the ability to call back the mortgages. So it's a vicious cycle. Tenants who have lost their job need money. And so there is quite a bit of discussion going on in Albany. I know that I and wrote a letter in support of the head of the Housing Committee, State Senator Brian Kavanaugh. And what it would do, it would sort of relieve tenants impacted by COVID of their obligation to pay rent. It would create a rental assistance program in the form of vouchers, something that we all have been working on over the years. And it would, funding, it would be a housing voucher fund depending on future federal stimulus allocations to New York from the feds. So it's a very complicated idea. But the notion is if you get money from Washington, and I think we will, then how could that be used for some kind of vouchers for those who have lost their jobs? So we have to start talking about this now, because I really am panicked about between the commercial and the residential. Those small mom and pop stores are having the same problems that tenants are having. And the governor needs to work with the electeds in Albany to come up with some rent relief. Instead of, waiting for the last minute. So that's my second suggestion. I don't have a whole lot. We're also working with NYCHA. I mean, NYCHA has issues before the virus hit us, God knows. I know I've been to more meetings at Fulton and Chelsea Elliott than every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. I kind of missed that discussion because it was very, very informative and challenging, but a whole lot of people put a lot of time in, including Tom Waters, may he rest in peace. That's an awful loss. But at NYCHA, we have been working on food. We are working not only in the local Harbor View and Chelsea and the wonderful folks at Fulton, but from the top of the bottom with hundreds of calls, but certainly with Fresh Direct. And the city has been very helpful, and we have 3 weeks of Fresh Direct paying and donating, and now the city's paying for the work that we're doing. We meet NYCHA and Fresh Direct every single day, 5 days a week, making sure that the residents get funding, particularly food for seniors. That seems to be still an issue. And I think food and housing go together in this horrible pandemic because the seniors are in their homes and they can't come out, and they used to go into places like Hudson Guild and that fabulous senior center, and there are others in Board 4. So I think we have to be ready. And I'm a big believer in having the kinds of great discussions that you're having now ready for May, and which is right around the corner, Friday, and also for June for tenants. We've got to come up with something that gives them the support. I think the unemployment is a challenge, obviously, in the state level, but it will work out. In other words, there's no question that when you file, you will get money. And there's no question that you'll get $600 in addition from the feds. But that may not be enough, obviously, to pay the rent and to pay for food and all the other expenses everybody has. So this is a real challenge. There's nothing more important than the discussion that's taking place today. And obviously, we'll hear from the state officials. There are a lot of state bills that are pending, and there are city council bills that also put money into people's homes to be able to pay for them. So that's what I'm going to offer, and we are ready and willing to help in any way we can. But I just want to emphasize that the money is what is needed so that tenants can pay the rent, and then particularly the small owners can get their mortgage paid, and the banks will leave them alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gail. We appreciate your efforts and we love working with you. I'm going to stay with the city officials next, just so we can finish this up. We have the birthday boy, ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the City Council, Corey Johnson, is celebrating his birthday today. We also have Council Member Helen Rosenthal. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you coordinate with your council member.
Thank you. Thanks, Lowell. And I'm happy to see Helen on, and it's always good to follow Gail, who is the best. And I see that Linda's on, and Dick is on, and Brad is on, and there isn't a better group of elected officials that fight for tenants every single day, especially you know about the work that Helen and Gail have done and continue to do, but on the state level, Linda and Dick and Brad continue to champion the rights for tenants. I'm going to try to keep this quick because I know there's a lot of people. I want to thank you, Lowell, for emceeing tonight. I want to thank CB4 and HCC for bringing us together to discuss this critical issue. Thank you, Jonathan, from Housing Conservation Coordinators. New York City, as you all know, was in a housing emergency even before this epidemic. Almost a third of New Yorkers were late on rent, 20% had their utilities cut off, 19% were doubled up, and 15% were facing eviction. Almost half of New Yorkers are living at, near, or just above the federal poverty line, and now an additional 500,000 workers are out of a job. And that means that many tenants won't be able to pay rent, but keeping renters in their home has to be our #1 priority, and not just during this crisis, but after the emergency orders are lifted. We have to give New Yorkers impacted by the crisis a fighting chance to get back on their feet, even as we start to reopen, even as the emergency orders are called off. So earlier this afternoon, the City Council heard 2 bills remotely through our Housing and Buildings Committee that will help give some New Yorkers some peace of mind, to let them know that we're doing everything we can to help. One of the bills we heard is a bill that I've co-sponsored with Councilmember Richie Torres, which would protect tenants impacted by COVID-19 from landlords who try to retaliate against them. We know that there are unscrupulous landlords. You heard Gail talking about some of the calls that we're getting, some landlords who are trying to use this tragedy to evict tenants who have suffered from this virus, and we're not going to let that happen. The other bill that I introduced will protect hundreds of thousands of vulnerable New Yorkers and struggling business owners, those mom and pop shops who are renters. The bill that I introduced would stop evictions and debt collection through at least September. This order goes even further than what the governor announced. And if you are impacted by COVID-19, collecting debts and performing evictions are banned until April of 2021, so a year from now. We're absolutely going to need some rent relief, but I believe these bills put us on the right track of trying to do something to give people peace of mind. Before I sign off, I just want to echo something Gail said, just to give a little context. The city is facing, in the current fiscal year that we're in, which ends on July 1st, and the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st, when you combine the 2 fiscal years, we're facing an $8 billion budget hole, unlike anything New York City has seen before. And you can ask Helen, we're on the phone all the time talking about the budget process. The mayor presented his executive budget. The council have some major problems with that executive budget and with the mayor trying to cut SYEP and a lot of these youth programs. And so we're trying to come up with creative solutions. but on things that are going to really be transformative for tenants and people that have mortgages and even the small landlords that are trying to figure out how to pay their bills, we need federal help. You saw the really unbelievably insane comments that Mitch McConnell made a few days ago about letting states and cities go bankrupt. What we really need is we need massive federal help. And I'm sure Linda and Dick and Brad will talk about this, but there are multiple bills that are really good bills that have been introduced by members of the state legislature to help renters and provide relief. But so much of it hinges on getting federal dollars. The state's facing at least an $8 billion hole, which could grow. The city's facing at least an $8 billion hole. The state is facing, as the governor said, a $10 to $15 billion hole. So there's no way that the city and state, through our own money, can figure out how to provide this relief. We need federal help. We need federal intervention. And we need, in this next stimulus bill from Congress, help that gives revenue replacement dollars to cities and states that have been most severely impacted. New York is number one, New York State and New York City out of the entire country. And we need in that bill also help for renters, for mortgage holders, for landlords, for small businesses. The PPP program is a good program, but so many small businesses have had a hard time accessing it. The banks haven't been giving out the loans to many people. And we need relief for small businesses, but also tenants. So I'm really grateful that CB4 and HCC are holding this event tonight. I want to mention that Eric Botcher, my chief of staff, as well as Matt Green, my district director, and Carl Wilson, who handles CB4 for my office, are on this call. Anything that we can do, let us know. And I'm grateful to be able to be on this call tonight with a lot of wonderful colleagues and elected officials that are always looking out for tenants in New York City. And lastly, I want to thank Jesse Bodine, who used to work with Gail, who's worked at the community board for a long time as our district manager. As Lowell will tell you, he's been doing a great job in the midst of this crisis. We are really grateful to him and the work that he's been doing at CB4. You all don't know it, but district managers are sort of these hidden heroes that are doing so much work across the city and keeping communities together and advocating to city agencies and working with elected officials. So I really want to thank, of course, Lowell, who is a volunteer. I was the community board chair before I was elected to the council. And I want to thank Jesse, who is really working with Lowell to make sure that CB4 and the residents of Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea are getting coordinated services from city agencies and from the elected officials. So thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Lowell. Thank you, Gail. It's good to see Helen, who I talk to every day. And it's nice to see Linda and Dick and Brad. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Corey. That was very nice.
Helen, can you follow that up?
No. So I'm just going to say everything Corey said, pretend I said it. So we don't have to thank everyone again, but everything he said is true. And I really want to thank all the elected officials and Jesse and Lowell for all the hard work everyone's doing during this just unprecedented time. I want to focus on two things that we've not talked about very quickly. One is domestic violence, which we know is happening in homes. And we know it's happening not just in the usual horribleness between partners or spouses, but also between adults and their teenage children. The city is taking some steps. I'm pushing the city to work a lot harder with messaging, getting the word out that services are available to anyone who needs them. The hotlines are up and running. There are counselors. The shelters are very much available. They're working very hard to keep those shelters COVID-free and to keep people isolated. The hospitals are available to people who need them. So for those who have been assaulted in any way, they should reach out for medical treatment. And it will be provided to them. And it's important that people know that if there's violence being perpetrated against them at this time, what's happening to them is incredibly important, and they deserve to get the help they need. So I'm working hard. We're having a hearing this coming Friday, May 1st. I think it's at 1 o'clock on how the city is responding to the increase in the amount of domestic violence that we know is happening, and what the city is doing to prepare for how to deal with the surge in demand when homes start to open up and people come out of isolation. So if you can help get the word out about that hearing, I'd really appreciate it. And second, I can't stress enough what Corey just talked about with the budget and the urgency with which we need federal help. You know, the city's looking at an $8 billion shortfall. I think that number is going to grow by the time we get to the executive, by the time we get to adopt the budget. I think, I don't know how the city will do that, but they're going to have to show a bigger hit to the city's revenues. I've been urging the city to look into borrowing, which short-term borrowing to pay for the very pressing needs that the city has right now. And, you know, if we're just waiting for the federal government to say they're going to give us money to help us out, we're going to be waiting till the cows come home, or at least until after the urgent need, the urgency is gone, although I don't think the need will go away for a very long time. So I'm pretty active in that work and very hopeful that the city will recognize that money, the shortfall in cash or in possible assistance should not hold us back from doing the right thing for people today. Public servants who are putting their life on the line, we should be appreciating them, making sure they have the PPE they need, and if need be, incentive pay or whatever it is. So those are the things that I'm working on in addition to the ones that Corey and Gail have mentioned. Most importantly, I know Housing Conservation Coordinators, you were on a Zoom call last night as well. John, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. It's only going to get harder. I'm not a lot of fun to talk to these days, but it definitely is only going to get harder. And, you know, what you're doing is going to really help and save a lot of people. So keep up the good work. Thanks, everyone. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Helen. Appreciate your help. I'm going to go next to the state legislature. There are a lot of bills pending up in Albany that are going to address some of these problems. We're going to start, only because he has to be somewhere else, with State Senator Brad Hoylman.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lowell. Just shout out to my colleagues, my state colleagues in particular, Linda, Dick, Senator Jackson, Bob, RJ, whatever you want to call him. Just want to say that, you know, I appreciate the Borough President's comments along with the council members about the crisis we're in. You know, if you're talking about this as being the state of, you know, tenant protections and housing in New York, well, it's pretty grim. You know, 40% of New Yorkers, according to the Times, were unable to pay their April rents. 40%, and May rent is due for most tenants this Friday. So what's going to happen? I mean, we have to come to you know, the cancel rent solution. I don't, if cancel rent is not a bill, it's going to be effectively the law. That's the way I see it, and that's what Senator Gianaris said the other night when Assembly Member Rosenthal and I had a town hall on this very issue. You know, so if we're not going to put it into statute, we're going to see the impact of it. You know, I'm concerned not only for the, you know, short and medium term, but the longer term. The governor's temporary reprieve of evictions, you know, lasts only 90 days. It's going to end on June 19th. And once that eviction moratorium has reached its scheduled end, we could see like this tidal wave of eviction filings in court over unpaid rent. I've ultimately, as has been said, we need federal assistance. I mean, it does not, it does not bode well with the Senate and the White House, of course. I know Congressman Nadler is fighting every moment for this, and I really appreciate that, and we need to support him in connection with that. So I'm hoping there is a state legislative effort, to support the Congress member, and I imagine there will be. Just one quick point is that I've introduced a bill with Senator Krueger called the Tenant Safe Harbor Act that would create a period of time from the start of the current state of emergency, which is March 7th, through 6 months after its expiration, where landlords could not file for evictions or for unpaid rent that might come due during this time, because legally landlords could still collect the rent that accrued during this time period, but tenants would not be at risk of losing their homes or failure to make rent payments. So that gives them this, safe harbor to get healthy, to get back on their feet, to get their jobs lined up, to start, managing their children. By the way, I told my husband last Thursday that it was actually take your child or daughter to work day, and I thought he was gonna clock me in the head because a lot of us are dealing with a lot with our kids. But so I just want to encourage folks to coalesce around the rent cancellation movement. It creates this 90-day period where residential tenants who have lost income and small business commercial tenants who've been forced to close will have their rent payments suspended. That's so important that we come out of this crisis, united as a housing movement. And I know I'll be looking to HCC for guidance on how to organize our constituents to that effect, and working with the speaker, the Congress member, the council members, and Dick, Linda, and RJ to make that happen. Thanks so much, Lowell.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. Now, I want to remind everyone we are going to go to questions after we are done with our electeds. We have 2 elected officials left. Of course, they have been incredibly patient because they were the first 2 to log on, and that did not go unnoticed. But I'm now going to go to the State Assembly to Dick Gottfried and Linda Rosenthal. Dick, are you going to start? And then we go to Linda?
Yeah. Before I talk about some of the bills that are pending, I want to make sure everybody understands and spread the word to your neighbors. Most New Yorkers never think that when they have a problem, their state legislators, their council member, their congressman are there to help. And, we get a lot of constituents who call and write. And I think the legislators representing Board 4 do a pretty darn good job of responding to constituent problems. A lot of legislators elsewhere in the city and state don't, but so many people never think to reach out to their legislators with a housing problem or any number of things. And during this period, that's really important. To quickly talk about some bills, and if you want more details, when you get my district office email address from Board 4, write to me and we can give you more details. One bill introduced by Yulene New and Senator Mike Gianaris would provide that for residential tenants and small businesses, if they have lost substantial income as a result of COVID-19, then they are exempt from an obligation to pay rent for 90 days, and they don't have to pay it back later. And they are entitled to an automatic renewal of their lease during that time. And if the landlord suffers financial hardship as a result, the landlord can reduce his or her mortgage payments proportional to the loss of rental income. Another bill sponsored by Steve Simbrowitz, who's the chair of our housing committee, and Senator Brian Kavanaugh, chair of the Senate Housing Committee, would create a rental assistance program at the state level so that a tenant who has suffered a substantial loss of income would not have to pay rent more than 30% of your reduced income, and instead the state would pay the unpaid portion of your rent for 90 days. Now that obviously depends on an appropriation, which in turn depends on us getting money either from the federal government or from raising taxes on big wealth in New York. The last bill I want to talk about is the bill that Brad Hoylman mentioned that he and Assembly Member Jeff Dinowitz are sponsoring, that would say that for until 60 days, 6 months rather, after the expiration of the current emergency, your landlord could sue you for unpaid rent to get a judgment to have you pay the money, but the landlord would not be able to get a judgment to evict you from the premises. You know, there are two things that are involved in an eviction case. One is the court saying you owe your landlord X dollars. The second thing is to say to the landlord, you have a right to throw them out of the apartment. And this bill would say that until 6 months after the emergency ends, there would be no eviction for non-payment. All of these bills, though, are dependent on the legislature coming into session. And there's really, at this point, no plan for us to either convene remotely, like we're having this session, or actually going back to Albany physically, presumably when the COVID-19 situation dies down. In order to have that kind of session convening, the legislative leaders and the governor need to hear from community groups, from advocacy groups, and from individual New Yorkers. And if you go to the Assembly website, the Senate website, the governor's website, you can find out how to get word to the governor and the legislative leaders that we need the legislature to come together and pass some of these bills. Thanks.
Thank you, Dick. Linda, I want to thank you for your patience. I want to remind you that you always put the fastest runner last on the relay team. So we're going to finish up with you. You're going to be our anchor leg here, and we appreciate your patience. But you're on mute, so I can't even hear you.
Let me find her. Hold on. Sorry about that, Linda.
That should work.
Okay. I said that's a lot of responsibility. Anyway, it's good to see all of you. Thank you, Lowell. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Leslie and John Furlong from HCC and all of your staff and assistants. Thanks for putting this together. I really haven't been on enough Zoom calls today, so I'm happy to be here. So my office has received hundreds and hundreds of calls from people, a lot of unemployment calls. So even though the website has been fixed and Google helped and they hired more people, there's still a logjam, and that's because of the overwhelming number of people who need unemployment. And while they're all reassured, yes, you'll get your money no matter when you apply, they need their money now. It's becoming a crisis for a lot of them. So we keep working with the Department of Labor, trying to expedite things for them. But one of the reasons they're so panicked is because they owe rent. And, you know, so many people have trouble paying rent pre-COVID. Right now, they're actually panicking. And we've had some cases where landlords are harassing people. One constituent, the landlord said that she needed a cashier's check from the bank, like endangering a senior to go out to the bank. So we reminded the landlord that a law I passed maybe 7-8 years ago says that a tenant can pay in whatever form they want. It doesn't have to be a cashier's check, so they back down. But this is the kind of stupidity that they're putting on tenants, which is disruptive and hurtful and causes them even more anxiety. So Dick mentioned some of those bills. I have a bill that I have been working on since after we passed the HSTPA, and landlords said, you know what? I am not going to rent out my apartments. Either they thought that we're going to roll back the HSTPA, which we're not. They thought they might win in court, or they're protesting saying that the IAI levels and the MCI levels are too low for them to make repairs. And I'm thinking, do you let your tenants live in such squalor that you have to use so much money to bring them back? They have to be up to code, and that's their responsibility. But I've introduced a bill on warehousing, and especially now, even more now, where you have so many homeless people who are sick, so many people who need units. Warehousing it is sort of a breach of the moral contract that we have with landlords. They produce the housing, we produce the tenants. And that's sort of broken when they willfully withhold them. We had a case where a woman was going to adopt her niece who was in foster care. She was in a single, and the landlord refused to rent to her an available 1-bedroom so she could adopt her niece. We prevailed upon him, but it can't be that every case needs a huge effort. Someone goes to an elected official and they have to, you know, bang the door. We have to reform the way landlords operate. And holding back units now is immoral. And so that's my warehousing bill. Yes, there's also the issue of people who left their units, let's say on vacation before COVID, and now they can't come back, or people who left because they had to care for a sick relative, and now they're away for months and months. According to the law, you have to be present in your apartment for it to be your primary residence for half a year and a day. Some people will not be able to do that. So, you know, I'm working on that issue as well with DHCR. Another thing I'm working on is people who owe money, like to unemployment, for example, for whatever reason, are being denied their unemployment claim now. So if you owe $500, they are taking what you would receive and paying themselves back. I've introduced a bill that says you can't do that because people need food, rent money now. They will pay you back after this COVID emergency subsides. But to deny them access to unemployment because they have a little debt at this time is the wrong policy, because people are desperate and need unemployment funds to live on. I think I'm going to, you know, be quick, and I think that's it. But if you need anything, call my office for anything you need. Good to see all of you.
Thank you again, Assembly Member. As I said earlier, we are going to be sharing everyone's phone number. All of the elected officials were here, and so all that information will be readily accessible. Before we go to questions, I see Senator Jackson has come back from CB12. I know how hard all our electeds work. I've seen it up close and personal chairing a community board, but I think they're really getting stuck now because they can't say, I can't make your meeting because I have another meeting to go to, because all they can do is switch back and forth. So Senator Jackson's doing 2 meetings at once here. Senator, if you can give us just, you know, your update very quickly, and then we're going to go to Q&A.
Sure, quickly. First, let me thank you for having your meeting, and obviously one of the major issues being discussed overall is housing, and obviously about because so many people are unemployed and cannot afford to pay their rent, or it's a huge issue. And obviously, I just wanted to, obviously, I don't know if Brad was on earlier, he may have updated you about some stuff from Linda and Dick, but you have the generous bills out there to cancel rent. You have the Kavanaugh bill out there for vouchers. I have a security deposit bill that I've introduced, basically, as what de Blasio said, use your security deposit to pay part or all of your rent, depending on what your financial situation is, and obviously a long period of time before that security deposit is put back. Obviously, a year may be appropriate, but quite frankly, it may be for more people than that. You need more than a year, as long as it's back there. And then, so obviously that's a very simple bill that hopefully should be passed. And then you have the Salazar rent freeze bill, and that is pretty straightforward, where anyone, regardless of what the Rent Guidelines Board say, let's say there's an increase at the Rent Guidelines Board, and I hope there is not. But if there is, then the Salazar rent freeze bill, bill number S8175, is pretty straightforward. It will basically freeze your rent for if you're a one-year renter. So in essence, there would be no increase for you. And then also there is Salazar's rent abatement bill, which is S8190, basically provides rent abatement for residential and commercial tenants who've lost their income as a result of COVID-19, as well as relief for small building landlords of 6 units or less and homeowners. So obviously there's a lot of bills that have been put forward or in the hopper right now. And I think that some of them will be amended or that we will drop some and use ones that are most comprehensive. But that needs to happen in the Democratic Conference. We go back on Thursday. What's today? Today is Wednesday, right? We go back tomorrow to discuss some bills. But one question that was asked for me up at CB 12 is if, in fact, if no laws are bills that are passed by the Senate and Assembly by May, what should we do? And I said, obviously, we're going to try our best to pass all of these bills as quickly as we can so we can have immediate impact, positive impact on the people that are suffering. But I said, if those people that can afford to pay their rent, they should pay their rent. If they cannot afford to, they should communicate with their landlord and say, listen, I am unemployed. I can't pay all of it. I can pay 25%. I ask you to give me a break on the other 75%. Until we pass legislation that will hopefully protect people. So I appreciate the fact that the Mayor's Office of Tenants Protection Unit is involved in everything also. That's very, very important. Besides DHCR, and I saw earlier that you had a representative from DHCR on the call and waiting also. So with the combination of all of us working together, in unity, there is strength. And that's what we have to do in order for the people that we represent, not only in the 4th community board, but all over the city and state. And that's what I'm going to be doing when I go up there tomorrow. When I say go up there, obviously virtually. And I just finished breaking my 5th day of fasting. I'm a Muslim, if you did not know, so I'm having coffee and water.
I know dinner is waiting for you, Senator, but I don't know how to break it to you. Today's Tuesday.
And today's what, Tuesday?
Today's Tuesday. You got an extra day in there.
My mind, though, it's like, you know, you lose the days when we're in this pandemic. Let me just say that to you.
Yep. All right. So if the electeds can stick around, we have the agency still on. I'm going to turn this back over to John from HCC. We have almost 24 questions, I think, that have come in. And John's going to shuffle through them and pose them to the panel as appropriate. John, it's your show.
Okay, so I just want to start by saying that, first of all, thank you to all of the elected officials that were on earlier. Really appreciate your being here with us tonight and sort of giving us some report backs, giving your analysis, and sharing some thoughts and ideas. Really appreciate you guys and the work you do. I want to start by saying that there is an excellent chance that we will not get to every single question tonight. And I want to flag that if you ask a question or don't feel it was answered in appropriately or thoroughly, we will connect you, and we don't know the answer, we will connect you to the person or the individual of the organization that can, and that we as HCC are here, at all times for follow-up and for concerns. So just want to have that kind of, I think, question safety net before we kind of get into this. I am going to, there's been a lot of questions that kind of came in late. I'm going to start towards the bottom. And I'm going to start, oh boy, where did that question go? So there's a few questions from folks that came in that had to do with kind of building questions and tenant association questions and tenant questions that are facing all groups of tenants. So HCC, sort of a shameless plug for my own organization, we're always here to work with TAs and help support TAs in some of the things that they want to do, and help them sort of push back on things like tenant harassment or repairs or anything where they might need our help. So we had, sorry, my cutting in and out, I apologize, this is like the worst time. So we had a question from Beverly Parker, who is a resident in Community Board 4, lived in a rent subsidized building, concerned about jeopardizing my apartment and status, needed reduced rate housing. If I cannot pay my rent in May and onward, should I worry if I can't pay now or be able to catch up in a few months? Beverly, why don't you hang out until the end? We're again really, I think, glad and eager to work with folks that have questions about paying rent moving forward. I also got a question from Rose Suarez about 7 o'clock around utility credits. Apparently Rose had been receiving utility credit for 16 years and wasn't included on renewal certification forms. Rose, we work with a lot of, HCC works with a lot of buildings that have this very same issue. Want to give a shout out once again to Corey Johnson's office. It's been kind of helping us navigate this question with tenants in buildings that are kind of facing this. It really depends on what's in your regulatory agreement from your building. If the building was financed using 421A or low-income housing tax credits, and we can help you sort of sort through that, but we definitely need to see the reg agreement that's attached to the building. I have a, let's see, I have a question here from Terry Darvish. Are seniors/veterans in support of SROs eligible for hotel relocation? I don't know the answer to that. Does either of Mark, Ricardo, do you want to?
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hi,
Yeah,
this is
Jermaine,
Jermaine from
Yeah.
HRA, right. So I've been, and I'm sorry I was a little ahead of you, but I was going through the Q&A and trying to type in the answers. So I actually reached out to my colleague, Lilani, and she reached out to our our commissioner to find out the answer to that question. So we'll definitely get back to you on that because we wasn't sure.
Okay, thank you.
With the SRO, okay.
All right. So I'm going to actually go, there's a great question that was posed by a colleague of mine, Max Uhlenbeck at HCC. And this is, I think, going to go to both of you again. Are low-income tenants able to access any pantry delivery services? I'm familiar with the prepared meals deliveries, which have been great, but I have tenants who are asking about non-perishables and who can't leave their apartment.
I'm going to ask Eric Botcher, are you still on? Is there someone on from Corey's office who can take that one? Because I know Corey's office is doing a pantry delivery, and I know Gail mentioned it.
Yeah, this is Matt Green. I think Eric just had to hop off for a minute, but we're happy to connect with anyone. We've been doing food deliveries for non-perishable items, and we're happy to connect with anyone who might need assistance. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and that person can reach out to our office directly, and we're happy to get them connected with food assistance.
Matt, could you also do it into the, if John's comfortable with this, you can type the answer into the Q&A as a panelist, and that
Sure,
will
absolutely.
go directly
Yep.
to that person.
Will do.
Okay.
I can tell you that I know Corey's office delivered over the last 2 days over 1,000 pantry boxes to various housing complexes within the Community Board 2, Community Board 4 area, covering 3 different assembly districts.
Okay. I have a question here from a non-rent stabilized tenant. Landlord wants to increase the rent for renewal. Is there some good suggestions for rent negotiation in this scenario? Yes, HCC is available to help with that. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of, I think, like a solid playbook for folks in non-rent stabilized buildings, but it's definitely about negotiation, about communication. So please reach out to us at HCC, and we can definitely help you with that.
John,
Elizabeth Torres wrote, yes, go ahead.
sorry, can I just add to your question? I think that was, sorry, can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do it.
Oh yeah, thank you. No, I think that that's an excellent question and a very good answer. Thank you, John. I just want to mention on that end, it's very tricky. It's a case-by-case type of situation. I think, if someone wants to start conversations with the landlords and they don't know how to do it, we can also help them with that through our helpline. We can connect them to lawyers that can provide free legal advice. So of course, John and the folks at HCC provide the service and can give guidance, but if there's tenants outside Community Board 4 or the catchment areas of these organizations, we're more than happy to help as well.
Great. Thank you.
Also, the so-called good cause eviction bill in Albany, which we unfortunately did not pass last year, but could pass later this year or next year, basically entitles a non-regulated tenant to a renewal lease at a very limited rent increase based on the cost of living. So in this tenant's situation, the landlord would be required to give a renewal lease at a limited percentage rent increase.
Yeah, Dave, thanks so much for raising that. I apologize for kind of skating over it before. Also, the rent increase would sort of fall more, if that particular piece of legislation was passed, would also fall more within the sort of the rent guidelines board range of rent increases. And that's something definitely that we left on the table when we, organized around the rent laws last spring, and really something that we hope to, a really big goal for tenants and for organizing in the state coming up. So I have a question here from Terry Darwish, directed at some of our state reps. Can New York State reps update the unemployment insurance program? When will constituents receive UI benefits to pay rent and buy food? You want to take that?
What was the question? When will they receive?
Yeah, when will they receive?
Well, the governor's office announced yesterday that there's a backlog of about 400,000 unemployment claims. Although we seem to be doing better than other states, according to a recent report, which is kind of hard to believe. The backlog is being cleared. As Dick said earlier, you should reach out to Linda or Dick or me or Senator Jackson, depending on who your representative is. We've been, at least in the Senate, I'm sure it's true in the Assembly, we've been ushering through specific claims to the Department of Labor and the governor's office to try to get our constituents' issues resolved. And that is the best way I have found to move something. My former district director, David Kruger, who I knew some of you knew, actually works for the Department of Labor. And believe me, I'm using that contact in every contact I have in the governor's office to make sure our claims are heard. So reach out to your elected official, make sure that you can get your claim with a bullet next to it as it goes through the Department of Labor. I hate to say it, but it doesn't seem to be enough just to go online and go through the normal channel. You have to pull every option available to try to move these claims. I don't know if my colleagues have anything to add.
Yeah, I would just add, part of the problem is not only that the volume of cases that unemployment is getting, is several times more in a day than they usually would get maybe in a year. But in addition, they're, like with so many state agencies like the HCR, Department of Labor's computer system is decades old. And, in any given year, if someone says, should we spend money on upgrading our computer system or spend it on something else? It's always easier to say, spend it on something else. And so we're now trying to update computer systems that were put in, like in the 1970s.
I think Assemblymember Rosenthal wanted to add to her answer, but she has to remember to unmute herself. There you go.
Apparently that's true across the country, that Department of Labor computers are antiquated. But from what I thought the governor said at one of his press conferences, we soon are going to run out of money to pay some of these unemployment claims. So we need, once again, more federal dollars coming in here.
So I want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Torres, who asked this question earlier and then reminded me that she had asked it. I kind of got a little bit lost in the shuffle. So thanks, Elizabeth, for raising your question. But Elizabeth asked about families that are undocumented and really scared to seek assistance. Is there, I think Ricardo or any of the folks on the panel, can you kind of speak to that issue a little bit?
Actually, this is Councilmember Rosenthal. Can I just jump in on one quick thing for the last question about unemployment insurance?
Sure, Helen, go ahead.
I appreciate that. Senator Janaris the other day on the phone on the Brian Lear show noted that he thought the governor, that it would be not unwise to not require this second layer of review when they're doing an approval for
Linda, you're cutting out.
Council member, we lost you for a moment there. She was saying something about Senator Janaris's bill.
Yeah, I think we lost her for now. Why don't we move on and she can.
Yeah. I can answer Mrs. Torres' question.
That'd be
okay?
Great, Ricardo.
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah.
So yes, if you are an immigrant living here in New York, or you work with the immigrant community, the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants is more than happy to connect you with the resources that we have. The best thing that you can do is call 311, and we will make sure that we connect you with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. So you can call 311, ask for the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, or also ask for the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants. And we will figure out which are the different benefits and resources you can access to. We will connect you with someone from the tenant support unit who is going to case manage your particular case, and we'll make sure to inform you all the different benefits that you can apply for. Please note, if you live in a household where there is a U.S. citizen living in that same household, that person might qualify for benefits that you might not. So for dealing with these particular cases, the best thing is treat them case by case. So call to us, 311, ask for Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs or for the Mayor's Office to Protect Tenants.
Awesome. Thank you, Ricardo.
Sure.
So I have a question. This is kind of not really directly related to housing, but I think it's probably a good one as we move into the warmer months. So somebody anonymously asked, cooling centers, how would this work during COVID-19 with distancing requirements and room ratio capacity? Anybody want to have any thoughts about that?
I think Controller Scott Stringer had put out something on that, and I know one of the council members did as well. I'm glad people are thinking about this now, because it seems like from germination to enacting it, it's like months and months. And I'm worried about that as well. For example, in NYCHA, which barely has the power to keep the lights on at all times, how are they going to handle summer? Especially if we still have to be 6 feet apart. Or as one of my colleagues said, I'd rather be 6 feet apart than 6 feet under. And she should trademark that. But I think it's a great question, and it's an unknown answer. The city has to put all of its smartest heads together, because we can't have a literal meltdown during the summer if people have to stay in as much as we have to now. It's a great question, no answer yet.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Linda, for taking that. And we have a question from Steve Galita. How does constitutional law play into these bills?
Wish we still had Jerry Nadler on.
Yes. Somebody want to play the part of Jerry Nadler here? Dick, I nominate you to play Jerry.
I would say the issue of constitutionality on some of these, particularly on the rent bills, is dicey. On the other hand, when you've got essentially a life and death emergency, governments under the Constitution can justify a lot of things under emergency that in ordinary times you might not be able to. Just like the fire department can break down your door if there's a fire. Other people in government can't break down your door.
We have the Senate chair.
Brad,
Brad, I was going to come to you as the chair of the State Senate.
Yeah, I would just add, practically speaking, this is not, on some level, this is less of a constitutional issue than it is like a basic, moral imperative. I mean, really, we're going to see landlords go to court and judges are going to evict tenants in the middle of a pandemic, or they're going to, take claims by, I guess, some landlords that a canceled rent bill is, not valid, and they're going to push that bill all the way to the, Court of Appeals. And I just, I think that question, while valid in a vacuum, ignores the political reality which is what Senator Giannaro said the other night, that people just don't have the money. And we're looking at mass homelessness if, in fact, we don't take some action. I mean, the rules do not apply. And I'd argue that the political and moral dimension will have an enormous impact on our ability to get these types of bills passed in Albany and withstand scrutiny in the courts.
And the other thing is the housing court, for example, is not just going to go back to normal. They're going to have a whole new set of guidelines. It's not going to be people milling about, people in the courtroom, people in the halls. It's not going to return to the way it used to be. And so that will also slow things down. So, landlords can jump to the beginning of the line. That doesn't mean they're going to jump quickly into a courthouse, because they're still going through how are they going to handle an avalanche of evictions and maintain the safety of the court personnel. It's all an unknown territory.
All right, John, back to you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to work off some themes here. So, my friend Alan Oster from the Save Chelsea Coalition asked the no rent bill in the New York State Senate for tenants who have currently, sorry, I'm reading this wrong. No rent bill in the Senate. Does the bill provide for a process to determine who has lost income and who has not?
Senator?
Yes, it should. I have to be honest, the bill is was initially a little underdrafted. I didn't write it. but it should include that. You know, in many respects, I think both landlords and tenants have to understand that this is not going to be the bill that passes. I mean, I think my colleagues know this, but it is an important kind of marker for the discussion that is going to ensue, I hope, soon between the governor and the two houses. So if the questioner has concerns, suggestions, he or she should definitely reach out to their representative. This is how we often draft bills. This is not, again, the rules do not apply. This is not a normal session where, you know, we're going to be, you know, having months of hearings and you know, debate on the floor over a bill. I think we need to hear from our constituents now about concerns and try to incorporate them into the legislation through the respective sponsors in the Senate and the Assembly. And as I think the council member was suggesting, even the governor has, you know, acknowledged the need to do something dramatic to address this issue.
Thanks, Senator. So I'm going to take a question, and I apologize for this. This is actually one of the first questions we got from Andrea Mercado. If someone files for bankruptcy, does it affect your rent stabilization status? Assuming, of course, that you continue to pay your rent.
No,
exactly.
It does not. It doesn't.
The resounding no, it does not affect your rent stabilization.
No, I had a bill. I was working on a bill on that, and as a case was wending its way through bankruptcy court, so I know quite a lot about it, and it does not.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda.
John, can I jump in here? Because I actually have a question for the lawyers on the call.
Please.
At a city council hearing today, the sheriff testified that once the governor's stay on evictions is lifted, that if a court orders an eviction, the sheriff's office will have no choice but to enforce that law. Now, I checked briefly with the speaker before he jumped off, and he said that the law department views it differently than the sheriff's office. But can any of my learned counsel on the call opine on that? Would the sheriff have to enforce an eviction order if one came down?
I mean, I don't think so. And they can be directed and get guidance not to. I mean, there are many extenuating circumstances where a sheriff does not have to. And so I don't think anything is cut and dry during these times.
But I'll add to that I think, you know, that's the impetus for creating some sort of buffer, you know, for tenants, commercial and residential, during this period. If the governor doesn't extend his moratorium, you know, they have the same issue out in California, and the tenant community is going nuts over Gavin Newsom's moratorium, because it's basically, it allows for paper evictions, as does ours. As soon as the courts open, landlords in theory could start filing for evictions, and then on June 19th, you know, pursue them. That's the theory. So we need, you know, I introduced a bill, as I mentioned, in connection with that, whether it's rent cancellation or any of the other bills. This cannot go you know, addressed. And we're getting very close. You know, June 18th is around the corner. So the pressure that tenant advocates need to put on the legislature and the governor needs to ramp up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to rely on the notion that a city marshal in a court-ordered eviction can or would refuse to execute the court's order. I think that's a real concern.
So it would be up to the governor to extend his moratorium to short circuit all of that.
Well, you know, I think he needs to do more than just extend it, though. You know, he's got to, you know, put some teeth in it and ensure that the evictions can't proceed on paper once the courts are open. So there's both physical eviction and the actual, the court-ordered eviction. But he needs to stop both of those from happening.
But you're also assuming that judges will evict people. And everybody has the same argument. So I can't imagine housing court judges wholesale evicting anyone whose landlord says they didn't pay the last 3 months.
I agree with you, and Brad has made this a moral argument, but as any litigator knows, judges can do whatever they want.
Yeah, they can, but they also have bosses.
Yep.
So.
All right, I'm sorry, John, I hijacked your Q&A.
It's okay.
I wouldn't want to rely on wholesale ignoring of the law by judges saying, you know, I'm going to exercise my moral judgment and not evict people for non-payment.
I mean, I don't think it's a moral judgment. If my landlord tries to evict me because my elevator is broken and I'm not paying my rent, true story, the judge will say to me, do you think you can come up with the money in X period of time? And I'll say, yeah. But I think this will be addressed. I don't think we should worry that this is the end of the conversation.
Okay, thank you. John?
So I'm gonna do one question that came in quickly and then move to a question for Ricardo. So the first question, Jennifer Marshall asked, has there been anything passed that will permit applying commercial security deposits to rent due? And I think that's something that the speaker, Corey Johnson, addressed when he was with us earlier in the meeting. There was a lot of I think testimony about that today, in addition to some other bills that came out. And if you need additional information about that, please follow up with his office or you can follow up with ours. For Ricardo, this is from my friend Enid Farber, who lives down on 9th Avenue. The mayor pronounced yesterday that he was not considering rent forgiveness, but instead supports using deposits to pay 1 month's rent and then going on a payment plan. It's exactly what Governor Murphy has proposed, but that will not solve the problem. Is he absolutely committed to the latter and unwilling to consider the former? I know that you're not, you don't make policy, but maybe you could address that in some way.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to make clear that I cannot speak on behalf of the mayor, of course. And I don't know, what conversations he's having with the more senior staff in City Hall. But what I can say and reiterate is that he supports the use of security deposits and the rent payment plans. And I think those are a good strategy and the steps towards the right direction. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm more than happy to connect with people that could further answer these questions. And I know a lot of the work that the city council and the state are doing goes along these lines, but I think I'm not the best person to answer the particular question of if the mayor is set in stone.
No, I appreciate that, Ricardo.
Let me just say that, the security deposit idea is a good one. I'm not sure if the city has the mayor has the power
exactly
to do that, but it is very short term, right? I mean, it is 1 month. We're looking at a much longer period of our neighbors' inability to pay rent. So, I think we got to think bigger than that, but I think it should be on the table as a short term. Something for maybe it's something for the landlords to seek.
Mm-hmm. So we had a couple questions that came in about co-ops, and I know.
Hello. Oh.
Yes. Go ahead, Jermaine.
Hi. Hi. Yeah. Just real quick, because I want to make sure that we just we don't forget the long-term picture of this. So which was good points, because of course we're not sure what a judge can do, and of course what a marshal would do in certain situations. But again, I think the thing has to be clear is that when we get to the point the courts open up and we're in housing court again, when it comes to HRA, is the future ability to pay rent. You know, when somebody asks for a one-shot deal and they show clearly that they can pay the rent going forward, there's a good chance that that rent arrears is going to be paid because the future ability is there if it's requested. Now, the problem would most likely be, if anything, for the one-shot deals and then the individual don't have future ability to pay the rent, what would happen in that case? So, you know, and of course, there's a lot of, you know, terms that's going to go into that. But again, you know, I think that does hold a little weight when we look at when we transitioning to becoming, you know, things opening and people, you know, facing eviction, and with the influx of the focus is going to be on at that point, which we're going to definitely have to look at. I'm sorry, that's all I wanted to add to that.
No, really appreciate that. Thanks for adding to that, Jermaine. Appreciate that. So there was a couple questions that came in about co-ops and maintenance assessments. I think that I'm going to kind of make an executive decision and ask that we sort of address these questions outside of this kind of meeting space. We're happy at HCC to help you kind of suss out some of those questions and refer you to some other house groups that actually work specifically with co-ops. We have a comment that was made. Sorry, this is, can everybody hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Just not if you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry, my computer told me that my internet was going out again. Doug Kleiman wrote around 8 o'clock, for those that have SNAP or EBT benefits, Fresh Direct and others are now accepting EBT payment for delivery. So thanks, Doug, for raising that. And I think, and I'm gonna take one more comment, one more question from Doug. One piece of the financial puzzle for commercial tenants is business interruption insurance. The insurance companies appear to be acting in bad faith and not paying out at all, even on policies that actually do cover pandemic, virus, etc., as well as civil authority. What is being done on a state or city level to compel insurance companies to pay out?
Linda, you're on mute again.
I'm putting people on mute when they're not speaking, just because we're getting multiple levels of
What
feedback
kind
from
of
people.
insurance are we talking
You don't
about?
want to hear my cat. In terms of, this is not commercial business, but these are small businesses up to 250. And then I have a bill of companies above 250 that are being denied coverage. So we have Bobby Carroll and has one, I have one, to force them to cover that. They're saying COVID-19 is not covered under their policy, because who could dream up COVID-19? I mean, this is their usual game. So we do have bills in Albany to address that part. I'm not sure about commercial tenants.
Okay, and the very last question, and this is again from Enid Farber. I wrote my building manager on April 10th and informed him that I would have trouble paying the rent as I had lost a lot, but not all of my income. I also detailed repairs that needed to be made, and I received no reply. I ran into the super on the street and reminded him of some of the urgent problems, but he made many excuses as to why these things would not get fixed. I was intending to continue the rent strike because of my compromised finances, but now I might have to rebuild a non-repair case as well. How can these reasons be in tandem without placing me at great risk for eviction?
I mean, they have to fix emergency, they have to do emergency repairs.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So if any tenant is facing emergency issues, they should connect with the city. HPD is right now doing or conducting emergency inspections, and it's making sure the tenants that are facing issues with their repairs, emergency repairs, those things are addressed. So again, call 311, make sure to make your case and say, hey, I'm facing these particular issues in my apartment. I need HPD's intervention, or you can connect with the mayor's office to protect tenants again, and we can make sure that we connect you with HPD.
Or you could call any
And
of
I'd
our
also say,
offices
Ed,
and we do the
let's,
same
I know you
thing.
and I work together on that. Yeah, and I'd also say, like, there's a lot of tenants in buildings, Enid, that are in a similar position, that are actually, actively going on rent strike, because folks can't pay, and also because there's repair issues. So let's circle back together and come up with a strategy there.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Yeah.
Okay, then Jesse, we have a resource sheet that we were going to display at the end here while I'm wrapping up. I want to thank.
I think, John, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted, John wanted to, I don't know if he did it already, but did you want to report out, John, about the getting involved in any of the campaigns with HCC at all?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of referenced them a little bit at the beginning, but we're
okay.
No, it's okay.
I wasn't
we're
sure if you wanted to touch
involved.
back on that. That's fine.
All right. So you have
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if yep, there we go. Okay.
Right. So this is some of the HCC resources, what they are doing. This information is available from HCC. Again, all of the electeds information, all of the agency information, the CB4 information. If anyone has any questions or any problems, please reach out to someone. We will get you the help you need, whether it's through one of the electeds, through the community board office. All of this information is available on the CB4 website as well, which is very simply mcb4.nyc. That'll take you to our website. I want to thank all of our panelists, especially the ones who stuck around, Dick, Brad, Linda, Ricardo, and Jermaine. Thank you so much for sticking around. I want to thank the speaker's office. I want to thank Gail Brewer. I especially want to thank John and Jesse for putting this together. And, we hope we have provided some information to the community that is helpful to you. Please, again, if you are having any kind of housing issue, please reach out. John, you want to wrap us? You want to take us home here?
I just had a couple of quick announcements. I mean, we're HCC, organizers are actively working with tenant leaders in the West Side Neighborhood Alliance, which is our tenant sort of organizing body, around these, several campaigns. One to cancel the rent in New York State. We've got almost 100,000 signatures that are going to Andrew Cuomo. If you want to get your name on that, please contact us. If you want to talk about trying to cancel the RGB, I know that's sort of a long shot for this year, but we're really trying to to provide as much relief and help tenants organize to get as much relief as they can. And the very last thing, and my colleague reminded me of this, is that we are going to be having our own tenants' rights night, and perhaps that weren't addressed tonight, or that maybe people didn't get to ask or even didn't think of, and that's going to be on May 13th in the afternoon, and we're gonna get some information out there. I believe it's from, I know it's in the afternoon, sorry. Keep an eye out, it's May 13th, HCC tenant resource event.
All right. Thank you again, John. Thank you all for coming. We hope we've been helpful. And to quote Senator Hoylman, our fight continues. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Have a good night, everyone.